Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to Joint American Rivers, Mayor's Innovation Project, Water Environment Research Foundation, and Efficiency Cities Network call on the topic of integrated water management from city to watershed. This is the final in a three-part series, and we thank you for joining. I'm Mel Meter, Senior Associate at the Mayor's Innovation Project, and we're delighted to welcome you all today. Before we get started, I do want to include a quick announcement from one of our partners. The Efficiency Cities Network exists to share good ideas for cities, how to make them work more efficiently and effectively, focusing traditionally on energy efficiency, but with interests far beyond that world. So soon, ECN and ACEEE are working together to bring you a series of webinars and additional content that focuses on the future of energy utilities and how cities can position themselves for the coming changes. This is part of a project to provide education, outreach, and technical assistance to cities on the topic of energy efficiency and engagement with utilities. A key objective of this project is to develop positive partnership models of cities working with their utilities to meet clean energy goals. The first webinar in the series is being planned for early summer on the topic of city utility partnerships. So please watch for an announcement with details on this webinar. And if you're not on the ECN list, you can sign up at efficiencycities.org. In just a minute, I'll be turning over moderation duties to Jeff Odefy at American Rivers, but first, a few housekeeping notes. This call is being recorded. All of your lines as attendees are muted, and if you have questions, you're welcome to send them along via the question box at any time. We'll sort through them at the end and ask them then. And so, as our first webinar explored, integrated water management has tremendous potential for cities, and local government leaders outside water utilities can also play a major role in implementing these approaches. Our second webinar addressed the co-benefits and triple bottom line possibilities that integrated water management can offer to any city looking to manage its water with better outcomes for sustainability, budgeting, and social benefits. Now, for our final installment, we turn to the power for cities to be leaders within their watersheds, working to advance integrated water management on the most effective scale through cooperation across jurisdictions. And now here's Jeff Odefy, a friend of us here at Mayor's Innovation Project and Director of Clean Water Supply Programs at American Rivers. Jeff?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us for this third webinar. It's very exciting to have you here, and not more exciting to have Mayor Jonathan Rothschild from Tucson, Arizona, and Kevin Schaefer from the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. So my job today is to kind of set a stage for everything and then get out of the way so you can hear more from them. I'll note that I work, as Mel mentioned, for American Rivers in the Clean Water Supply Program. My office is in Nevada City, California, here in the Sierra Foothills, but from here I get to travel quite a bit, and I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Mayor Rothschild, his staff from Tucson Water, as well with Kevin, on some of these conversations at a national and regional level about integrated water management and what that means, not in an academic sense, but in a kind of a practical application of concepts, of ideas, of policies at a level that helps municipalities reduce the historical silos between water services, between government entities, and between municipalities that share a region or a watershed. So as Mel mentioned, this is the third of a series of webinars that began really, or has its genesis in a conversation that Mayor's Innovation Project, WRF, and American Rivers sponsored at the Wingspread Conference Center in Racine, Wisconsin last fall, where we brought together mayors, water utility leaders, thought leaders, for conversations about how integrated water management can improve resource sharing, resource planning, efficiency and conservation, both within, or at these three levels, within government agencies or municipal agencies, across the municipal agencies that make up water service for a location, and then between municipalities as they fit within a watershed. So note just a bit about scale. Watersheds, of course, come in all kinds of different sizes and shapes and different types of water. As both of our speakers will discuss, this integrated approach responds to these scales, especially in ways that are relevant to each community. So a different size or different kind of water will be the focus of water management depending upon where we are. And an integrated water approach can respond in ways that cross between municipalities within a region, or offer better stewardship or holistic approaches to stewardship of a shared water resource. So today's speakers are going to focus on their community's efforts to integrate their water supply, water quality, and community enhancement efforts across these different scales and types of watersheds and jurisdictions. Both speakers represent communities that are dependent upon the health and security of larger watersheds, in Tucson's case, the Colorado River, in Milwaukee's case, the Great Lakes. And so their efforts are to strive to ensure that local waters are sustained for future generations, while these regional water bodies are also efficiently managed. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Mayor Jonathan Rothschild from Tucson and Kevin Schaefer from Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. Our first speaker today will be Mayor Rothschild, who took office in December of 2011, was recently re-elected and began his second term. Throughout his tenure, he's focused on building Tucson as really a city for the future and has opened a whole new era in downtown redevelopment, particularly by establishing incentives to attract and build local businesses and lead efforts to secure over $100 million in road improvement bond financing. One of the things I enjoy about Tucson is how bikeable of a city it is. It's part of the mayor's vision for alternative modes of transit, including light rails and bicycles, and a focus on urban resiliency that's led to leadership on reducing urban heat island effects through a 10,000 trees challenge, which seems to have been easily met. During his administration, Tucson won a Smarter Cities Challenge grant to help Tucson Water adopt new technologies to save water and energy. As but one example, in 2014, the mayor's office worked with a local nonprofit organization called the Watershed Management Group to pass a Green Streets policy, which is directed Tucson's Department of Transportation to consider using stormwater as a source of water for irrigating trees and other vegetations throughout downtown. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Rothschild, who is going to give you a sense of how Tucson is working with his partners in Arizona to effectively respond to drought while setting a leadership role for water conservation throughout the region. Mayor Rothschild, thanks for joining us.
All right, well, thank you, and good morning to everybody. I'm Jonathan Rothschild, Mayor of the City of Tucson, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you about Tucson's water future and how our management of our current water system with our regional partners will affect that future. If we go to the next slide. Our future as a city and as a region depends on careful management of three different sources of water. First, our local surface water. Once perennial, the Santa Cruz River now runs intermittently along with many creeks and washes. Second, our Colorado River water. Tucson is 300 miles from Lake Havasu and the start of the Central Arizona Project, which brings water from the Colorado River. We recharge that water, storing it underground, and pumping it when we need it, which has allowed us to replenish our third source of water, which is our groundwater. If surface water is our checking account, then groundwater is our savings account. The ancient aquifer in the Tucson Basin is replenished naturally and slowly by rivers, creeks, washes, and the same rainfall and snowpack that feeds those rivers, creeks, and washes. We add to that by recharging Colorado River water, with the result that after years of decline, our water table here in Tucson in the middle of the Sonoran Desert is actually rising. Now, in order to get that done, stewardship of these water resources requires conservation, innovation, and collaboration. So first, let's talk about conservation. If we go to the next slide. Tucson is a leader in water conservation. We have lower per capita water use than the vast majority of cities our size in the United States. In Tucson, we have made water conservation a way of life. We've done that by years of education programs and providing incentives to our citizens. It's become part of our culture, part of our identity as desert dwellers, and that helps us conserve our water resources. If you could go to the next slide. Through aggressive conservation efforts, Tucson's overall water use is less now than it was in 1985. And that's despite the fact that we have 200,000 more people living in Tucson's water service area than we did 30 years ago. Some of the examples of our residential conservation programs are noted in this slide, but I will tell you the one that brings the biggest bang for the buck by far is the high efficiency toilet rebate system. We also do gray water rebating, rainwater harvesting rebating, and then you'll see the program called Zanjero. Zanjero is Spanish for an official who manages water rights. The Zanjero audit program provides residential customers with free water use audits and recommendations to save water and money. So we actually take our water folks out to people's homes individually. When we go out, we include an inventory of water-using fixtures, leak and flow rate inspections, an assessment of landscaping and irrigation, and setting and adjusting irrigation controllers. Our customer outreach includes English and Spanish billing inserts in our water bills, public service announcements, TV, radio, and workshops. We make a large investment in this conservation education when it comes to water programs. We have a large number of low-income folks in our community. So our low-income programs include grants for rainwater harvesting through a program we call SERI, S-E-R-I, or Sonoran Environmental Research Institute. And there we employ monolingual Spanish promotoras to educate Spanish speakers on things like lead paint and now rainwater harvesting, and also provide grants for the high-efficiency toilet replacement through a program called CHIRPA, which is the Community Home Repair Projects of Arizona. Go to the next slide. We have other programs that are also geared toward commercial, multifamily, and industrial users. There we have flush-a-meter toilet programs, which for your information is a tankless toilet. A tank toilet uses gravity to flush. A tankless toilet uses water pressure to flush. But we will also go out to businesses just like we will to homes and do water smart business audits, tests for irrigation efficiency, do smart scaping classes for businesses, and ask businesses also to participate in our rainwater harvesting program. Next slide. So this slide takes a little looking at, but the point of all these conservation programs is to delay the point where demand exceeds our supply of Colorado water from the CAP. GPCD, which you see on the right of the slide, is gallons per capita per day. And what you can see is our banked Colorado River water right now should, if we stay on our current projections, keep us in the close to 2040. But if we can expand our conservation efforts and reduce our dependence on this imported water from the Colorado, it will give us greater flexibility in how we manage our water. The water we save today is the water we can store for tomorrow, which increases our overall water security. So that's the plan. As you can see in the orange slide, at some point in the future we have to use a combination of supplies, and we want to stretch that as long as we can. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about innovation. Recharge is really Tucson's biggest accomplishment. Like conservation, recharge has also delayed the point where we need to integrate other renewable reuse to our water system. Very large recharge basins, and you can see pictures of them and get a sense of the scale of them on your screen. The first is called CAFSARP, which is the Recharge and Recovery Program. So that's the Southern Avra Valley Recharge and Recovery Program, which we call SAVSARP. And again, you can see the scale of it from the picture. Tucson Water gets most of its water from the Arizona Project Canal.
Heather, how are you? Doing well, thanks.
And we infiltrated into our aquifers in the Santa Cruz River and Avra Valleys. Our allocation of CAP water is 144,172 acre-feet per year. And that exceeds our current annual use of about 100,000 acre-feet per year. So you can see we're banking a lot of that CAP water. And because we don't use all the water we receive, we're able to build up a water savings account in our underground aquifer, which provides us with a buffer against drought in the future and future shortages. So go to the next slide. So what this chart shows is that our groundwater use today is actually, and that's in blue, is actually at 1945 levels. In 1945, our valley had approximately 30,000 people in it. Today it has close to 1 million people in it. And we're actually continuing to decline that use. So that means our water table is rising, which gives us hope that one day we can actually have our surface waters reappear, which will mean more perennial streams, creeks, and perhaps even our rivers. So you can see what we're looking at is really very little use of groundwater, use of our CAP water, but also beginning to use our reclaimed water. So if you go on to the next slide. But things have changed since the 1970s when the Central Arizona Project first went into effect. As you can see, even from the slide, the shortage is looking more and more likely. And what you can see is Lake Mead at its fullest on the left, and now where you see that white, that's where there's been a subsidence in the lake. So Arizona and the lower Colorado River Basin states are looking at changes to our water portfolio, and that includes California and Nevada. A decade and a half of drought throughout the basin has resulted in diminished flows in the Colorado River and plummeting reservoir levels. Tucson's history of stewardship, however, has positioned us to adapt to coming shortages and to play a leadership role in creating regional resilience. And that's where these partnerships really come into play. And that's where collaboration is important. If you go to the next slide. So this chart shows a pioneering water sharing agreement which Tucson, the city, has made with local farmers and the city of Phoenix. Because of what you saw in those earlier slides, those CAPSARP and SAVSARP slides, our water recharge and recovery facilities position Tucson to act as a bank for other Arizona cities and farms. So through water exchanges, we can accept canal water allocated to our partners, stored in our aquifer, and exchange it for water credits that they may need from the canal in the future. Our partners pay the cost of expanding our infrastructure, so we become the central bank. We all gain water security. Tucson gets the wet water, so our water table continues to rise, and of course that reverses those decades of overdraft. The exchange program, which we've made with the city of Phoenix, can and probably will expand to other Maricopa County jurisdictions. That's the county to the north of us, and our counties here in Arizona are the size of smaller states back east, but with also other CAP users. You can go to the next slide. So let's talk about moving forward. Responding to long-term drought is a shared responsibility among water providers throughout the Colorado River Basin. By developing innovative policies and water sharing agreements, Tucson contributes to multi-state efforts to slow declining levels in Lake Mead and to assure secure flows of river water to communities that depend on it. Moving forward, Tucson is positioned to play an especially significant role in water resource management in Arizona and across the Colorado River Basin. Storage and exchange agreements, like the ones I just showed you, allow cities like Phoenix to bank CAP water they're not using in our recharge basins. In the future, they'll take our CAP allocations through the credits and we'll withdraw the same amount from their bank account in our recharge basins. These water sharing agreements build new and much needed flexibility into Arizona's CAP water allocation. Current and future conditions in the watershed call for these kind of innovative approach. In addition to storage and exchange agreements, Tucson also enters into wheeling agreements, and you see their local wheeling agreements and water sharing agreements. And that allows cities at a distance from the CAP canal, so our sister cities that surround us, to use our infrastructure to access that renewable supply, which reduces their pumping of groundwater, saves energy, and essentially Tucson's water infrastructure fills these other cities' water infrastructure gap. So what this allows us to do is start to develop our recycled water program before it's needed, and we're in the process of doing that, and it allows us to continue to preserve our groundwater rights. So now we're banked 30 to 40 years of supply without any CAP water, and so that gives us a real cushion going into the future as our technologies advance. So that's my presentation. After we've heard from our friend from Wisconsin, I'll be happy to take questions. So thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. That was really an insightful look at Tucson's diverse portfolio of water resources. It's always striking to see how municipalities like Tucson adapt to live in such arid climates. I'm looking forward to coming back to that. I want to thank you all for your patience as we sorted through some technical difficulties. There always seems to be a handful of those with this super advanced technology of webinars. And so Kevin Schaefer will be our next panelist. Kevin's the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. He's had that role since 2002, and over his tenure there has advanced MMSD's focus on green infrastructure, particularly to reduce flooding and water quality impacts associated with wet weather in that region. Kevin tells me it's raining in Milwaukee today. For example, he's been instrumental in building the district's award-winning and rather pioneering Green Seams project, which protects critical riverside land as an effort to rebuild floodways and reduce flooding and stormwater impacts downstream. He's been a regional leader in the Fresh Coast 740 initiative, which I think we'll hear more about. It includes a number of studies and plans and implementation of green infrastructure throughout the metropolitan region, not just within MMSD's sewer service area. One other key success story I'll point out is the Southeast Wisconsin Watershed Trust, or Sweetwater. It's a collaborative program to achieve significant improvements in water quality, aesthetics, and habitat in Southeast Wisconsin. And I've also had the great pleasure of working with Kevin on kind of a more national front, where he brings these perspectives to the U.S. Water Alliance and Board of Directors, and I believe what's the new merger between WRF and the Water Reuse Federation. So Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And, you know, it's interesting that we're going from some great water management approaches in a very arid climate in Tucson, and now shifting to the Great Lakes, where, as Jeff said, it's still raining and kind of a dreary day here today, but going to a very wet climate. So I want to talk about some of the regional efforts that we have undertaken to implement integrated watershed management. And I guess I'll have to have someone advance the slides for me. So next slide, please. Oh, maybe I have control, we'll see. So as you see here, we try to look at everything from a watershed scale. It's more than just a sewer service area, which is the red line that you see on this map. We're trying to address the entire watershed that drains into Lake Michigan, one of the Great Lakes. And in doing that, we have to deal with 9 counties, 83 municipalities over an 1,100 square mile area. Next slide. If you zone down into the sewer service area that I talked about, it's 1.1 million people, 411 square miles, 28 different municipalities. And what MMSD does is we convey and store wastewater, and we manage flooding. So we've got a deep tunnel system, we have 2 water reclamation facilities, and we deal with both private sewers on private property, municipal sewers, and then our regional sewers themselves. The 2 water reclamation facilities are shown where these pins are in the map, and Jones Island is the oldest. It was put online in 1926, and just a typical water reclamation facility that you'd find in a lot of places around the country. And then South Shores on the south side, that one came online in the mid-1960s. Both treatment plants will treat anywhere from 70 million gallons a day up to 300 million gallons a day. So we have a total capacity of treatment around 600 million gallons a day. We also have produced a product since Jones Island came online called Milorganite, Milwaukee Organic Nitrogen. This is a biosolid fertilizer that has organic nitrogen in it. And we produce anywhere from 40 to 50,000 tons per year, and that offsets our revenue expenditures by about $8 million. So it brings in about $8 million a year of revenue. And this is actually the 90th year of Milorganite. It's the longest running biosolids fertilizer program in the country. I mentioned the deep tunnel before. We're actually putting water into the deep tunnel today as it's raining. It holds 521 million gallons. It's just a big bathtub, 300 feet below ground. And it's around 28.5 miles long and ranges in diameter from 17 to 32 feet. It was designed to get us down to 1 to 2 combined sewer overflows per year. And since the tunnel came online in 1993, it's captured 98.3% of all the water that's come to it. So you may read about combined sewer overflows in Milwaukee. If you do, it's that 1.7% that we still have. And it's something that we are still continuing to manage and strive towards, but we've set a goal to try to get to 100% capture and clean. As we look at integrated watershed management, the one thing we've all had in school is we all know the hydrologic cycle. And what we've really done as we've developed, as the populations have grown, we've really interfered with that hydrologic cycle, either by putting impervious cover down or lining our waterways with concrete. It's just something that I think we need to return to a more natural system. So we need to integrate our natural systems with the built environment. So here in Milwaukee, we've got the tunnel, we've got the treatment plants, we've got all this impervious cover. We're working now to try to adapt that infrastructure network into a greener, natural approach. And to do that, we put a vision together that I put out in 2009, and my commission adopted it in 2010, where on the left side is the integrated management goals. We're calling for 0 combined and separate sewer overflows, 0 homes in the 100-year floodplain, and we've got a program that I'll talk about in a minute called the Green Seams Program, where we're trying to acquire 10,000 acres of river buffer to preserve that open space and let it continue to allow as a natural sponge. On the right side of the vision is the climate adaptation steps that we're working towards, but I'm really going to focus on the left side of the vision that you see here today. So a lot of everything we do is based on science, and a lot of what we are basing our current work on is some work that was done by the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, where they modeled all of the watersheds in the region. If you look at fecal coliform loadings, what they found between 1975 and 2000 was that we reduced the fecal coliform loadings by over half, and that was by putting a huge investment into the deep tunnel system, into the treatment plants. So as you can see, we went from combined sewer overflows being 49% of the problem to now they're only 7% of the problem. We're seeing that the pollutants that we're getting into the rivers and into our drinking water supply, Lake Michigan, is really coming from urban and rural stormwater runoff. So it's the runoff from parking lots, rooftops, farms. All this natural stormwater runoff is now the biggest cause of pollution in the region. So this tells us that we need to adjust our approach if we want to continue to protect our drinking water supplies. And to do that, it takes a bigger effort. You got to take that watershed approach that I talked about before. And so we really reach out to many different entities. Sweetwater is the logo on the bottom left that Jeff talked about, Southeast Wisconsin Watersheds Trust. The Water Council is a group of businesses in the area that are all water focused. So we've been able to bring business together with the environmental community, together with the municipalities in the state, to really move forward in a integrated fashion. One of the projects we started with was we decided we need to start along the rivers themselves. So the Valley Park project, this is a rendition of what we thought it would look like, and here is what it looks like today. This is a flood management project, but it's really a county park. If you talk to people, they would not even realize that this is part of a flood management system, but just a playground in a county park. So trying to integrate that natural approach into what we're doing with our larger scale projects. County Grounds is a 90-acre flood management facility. In the old days, we called this a detention pond, but it's really much more than that. Again, it looks like you're in northern Wisconsin. It does not look like your normal flood management facility. And it's utilized for all types of passive recreation, but during a rainy storm day, it does stores stormwater. And the bottom right, you can see the dedication of that. Tom Barrett is the person on the right. He's been a huge advocate helping us push forward with these initiatives. And we also are trying to correct the sins of the past. We, in the 1960s, added concrete lined channels to a lot of our waterways. And in a great partnership with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we've been able to utilize some federal funding and local funding to remove this concrete, add a meander back into these straightened rivers, and really try to restore nature to the waterways themselves. So those are the kind of the large-scale projects along the rivers, but we also feel like we need to work upstream into the neighborhoods and into the backyards of our constituents. So we started a Fresh Coast 740 program where we're trying to get green infrastructure into these smaller parcels of land, and we're trying to capture 740 million gallons of additional storage with green infrastructure. And we're managing water where it falls. We based a lot of this off of a sustainability plan that we developed. These are all available on our website, and then a green infrastructure plan followed that. And part of that green infrastructure plan is a regional program where we're acquiring property along the waterways that is still undeveloped. We call it the Green Seams program. We call it Green Seams because these green parcels of land are knitting together the region. And we've got over 3,300 acres of land purchased, which is allowing us to manage floods in a large-scale, greener fashion without pushing water downstream from impervious areas. And on that neighborhood or rooftop approach, we've got an aggressive green infrastructure or green roof program. We pay $5 a square foot for green roofs. Right now, we're managing close to 500,000 gallons per storm with green roofs, and 55,000 of that was funded in 2014. So every year, we take a little step further along on our green approaches and really get closer to that 100% capture and treat, which is what our goal is. We have a rain barrel program. We started this in 2001. We've sold over 20,000, since 2002, we've sold over 20,000 rain barrels. And what's interesting is we have over 1 million gallons of rain barrel storage sitting on the downspouts of people's homes throughout the region. It's not only a great way to manage water and reuse that water to harvest that rainwater, but it's a great educational piece for people to be able to understand how they can manage water themselves. And then we have programs where it's different areas around the city where we try to work with the residents on a neighborhood scale, not just an individual property scale, but a neighborhood scale, to implement green infrastructure. This is one where it's along the 30th Street corridor in Milwaukee, and the Fresh Coast 740 program has implemented close to 8,000 gallons of rainwater capture for each storm. So every drop counts when we're dealing with these issues, and we're taking these steps, working with the neighborhoods and with the community. And with that, this is a great event. It's the U.S. Triathlon. It's here every year. Thousands of people come and compete, and this is them competing right off the shore of Milwaukee and Lake Michigan. So thank you very much for having me, and it's great to be part of such a great panel to talk about how to manage water in an integrated fashion.
Thanks so much, Kevin. That last photo is really telling. I think I heard you describe the story of the transformation of the lakefront and how that water was probably not the most hospitable place for a swimming event in the distant past. This is a really interesting panel. I'm really considerably struck by the disparity between an arid city and an overly wet one, and yet the commonality between some of the approaches that we have. So I encourage you all who are listening in and watching to submit some questions for either of our speakers or both of them. You can do that via the question box on the right-hand side of your panel, and we'll read them out. Look forward to those. In the meantime, I'm going to take my prerogative and ask a few myself. One thing I noticed, Kevin, you really stressed was the role of businesses in your collaborative watershed approaches. I wonder if you could spend a few minutes describing some of that. And then I'd like to pose that same question to Mayor Rothschild. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about the role of the private sector in Tucson's water security story.
Sure, and so I talked about the Water Council, and it's really this synergistic organization that came about in 2008. I'm on the board of the Water Council, and it's something that the district has supported, because for us to have a strong, clean environment, we need to have a strong economy to go along with it. So it's really been a hand-in-hand partnership moving forward. And when you start talking about sustainable integrated water management, some of the really experts in doing that are private industry. Here in Milwaukee, we've got Miller Coors Brewery, and they are, in my view, one of the leaders on how to protect their supply chain while still protecting the environment. So it's something where it really goes hand in hand with the economic and environmental future of the city and of the region. And I think if you cannot bring in that business component, that industrial component into the discussion, it really hinders the entire effort.
Mayor Rothschild, do you have thoughts on the role of the private sector in Tucson's water story?
Yeah, here our intersection with the private sector really has a great deal to do with the University of Arizona, which is a center for arid land studies. We have over 300 professors at the university who teach in that area. So as a result, oftentimes they will be making cutting-edge inventions that they're looking to take out to the market, and we coordinate with them and work with them so that they can see how systems work. Not so much putting them online, but to have that resource here locally when we go out and are thinking about how to be on the cutting edge has been very helpful. We also have worked with IBM, who came in and worked with our water department on our Smart Cities Challenge and really helped advance us into the next level with regard to digital metering and the like. And here our water resources are divided. The city of Tucson has the potable water, and the county has the wastewater, but we're working together to make wastewater potable and have received a big grant from the Dow company, who's working in this field. So between IBM, Dow, and what we have at the university, we can stay in real time with innovation.
Thank you both. I'm going to turn a little bit to stormwater, which was a pretty prominent feature of Kevin's presentation, but plays different roles. Kevin, I'm thinking about stormwater as really a water quality in a wet weather environment. And Mayor Rothschild, of course, stormwater or rainwater harvesting is perhaps a source of additional water supply or water supply security. So one of the things that I think local governments often struggle with is just the resource needs of stormwater management. So I'll start with Kevin. Does Milwaukee and does MMSD run a stormwater utility fee program, or are there credits for some of the green roof installations that go along with that?
Sure. Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, MMSD, is not or does not have a stormwater utility. We have 28 different municipalities, though, that are in the region. I believe 18 to 19 of those municipalities do have their own stormwater utility. And so we kind of set as an umbrella over each of those 28. And so the utilities themselves, they have that ability to raise revenue to address pretty much the stormwater pipes and detention pond type approaches. What we do with MMSD funding is we provide incentives for the green infrastructure components. So if it's porous pavement or rain barrels, rain gardens, green roofs, those items that I talked about earlier, we provide financial incentives to help offset the cost, the upfront cost of that, and then have the either the property owner or the municipality that we implement that improvement on, they maintain it moving forward. So we really try to work hand in hand with those stormwater utilities. But I do think one of the biggest challenges that we face as a industry and as a country to make sure that we have abundant clean water moving forward is how we manage stormwater better and how we pay for some of these improvements, whether it's on the reuse side like they're doing in Tucson, or just on the water quality improvement side in these wetter climates where we're trying to meet total maximum daily load limits. It's an integrated approach that needs to be done across the country, but you need to have funding to do that.
Hey, I'm going to turn to you a bit. I know Tucson does not have a stormwater utility fee or service fee, but I gather you've probably been thinking about that as a source of revenue, and just thought I'd invite you to discuss some of your perspectives on funding for stormwater or rainwater harvesting.
Yeah, I agree that an area that municipalities and counties need to really start looking at is how to maximize what can be done with stormwater. We do have a stormwater utility, regional stormwater utility, but it does have no revenue source attached to it. So, of course, that makes it difficult to really do the work that needs to be done. The first thing that we did here is pass a Green Streets policy. We have an old system in terms of stormwater where oftentimes when it rains here in the summer, and it can rain intensely for several hours, our streets become like rivers. And so we're looking for ways first to work with our new street construction and design to capture as much of that stormwater as we can. But after that, we're working to assure that we can get as many folks out of floodplains as we can. I saw that there was a goal in Milwaukee to get to 0%. That would be wonderful here too. Obviously that helps our citizens. And then we're identifying those locations which are the best to focus on stormwater infrastructure, but ultimately we need to go here to our voters and get them to approve those funds that are necessary. But you can't make that case until you've done a lot of work to show how people are benefited either by lack of being inundated or simply being able to take those waters and put them to our benefit. And I think as people become more aware of the possibility in the future of lower water supplies, we'll see more emphasis on stormwater infrastructure and perhaps a willingness on our voters' parts or our electeds' parts to have the courage to charge for what's necessary. But that's definitely going to be a component going forward. And it's when you talk about collaboration, stormwater, like many things, doesn't honor municipal bounds. So all of the jurisdictions have to work together.
Yeah, let's pick up on that theme a little bit. It's kind of an underlying concept in this webinar. I know that there are a number of municipalities surrounding Tucson and Pima County, and Kevin certainly spoke about the dozens, like 24 municipalities in the Milwaukee metropolitan area. And both of you are facing a need to to collaborate and to work with those municipal governments and county governments. So I think I'd invite you, perhaps starting with the mayor, to think about some of the challenges or barriers that you're encountering along the way, as well as any lessons learned from successes and things that are working out as you try to collaboratively and cooperatively approach water quality and water quantity challenges.
Collaboration, I think, starts with your leaders, and of course sometimes that is fortuitous upon the personalities in the jurisdictions. We're fortunate right now in the Tucson area that all of the mayors in the region are friends. We have a Pima Association of Governments, which is a regional planning agency. So we do some of our regional planning through there, and the mayors get together there along with the county representatives. But the fact that Tucson and Phoenix have been able to collaborate is an indication of the importance of the topic and the importance of leaders who are enlightened, understanding the need for collaboration. I can tell you of one case here between one of our satellite cities in our county where there was a power struggle over who was going to control the wastewater, and it ended in years of litigation, and it ended in years of legislation, and those matters have been resolved. But it's important that the jurisdictions walk into the room, set common goals, and then agree to set aside personal or jurisdictional interest and really look at these matters on a regional level, because water, along with transportation issues, are clearly regional issues and can't be addressed any other way.
This is Kevin. So yeah, we have 28 different municipalities in the area, and I couldn't agree with the mayor more. And there's a lot of similarities again with Tucson. We have something that occurred here in the 80s and early 1990s called sewer wars, where we fought over who was going to pay for the deep tunnel system, which now is doing such a phenomenal job. But it really divided the region, and even though that's been over for 15, 20 years, the feelings are still there with a lot of folks. So going in and talking to the different municipalities from the very beginning, it was one of those where we felt like we needed to do a lot of listening. We need to understand the needs of our municipalities as well, because as a regional sewer utility, our regulatory requirements, our needs are different than theirs. And that's why on my slides I showed the hydrologic cycle, because it really does get back to that. This is all tied together by that cycle, and we need to address it that way. And not just partners on the municipal level, but we also need to partner with the agricultural community as well. They're a great partner. I think they're doing some really innovative things to try to reduce pollution runoff and stormwater runoff. And I think there's ways that we can partner with them to assist with that, reduce flooding in downstream municipalities, but also maybe help them improve their yields or provide water supply for their livestock.
Hey, Kevin, and you also, Mayor, I want to drill down into that a little bit. We often think about collaboration between municipal entities or different water departments or county governments. But for both of you, agriculture plays a pretty significant role in the health of your watersheds. So, Kevin, you were just mentioning them as farmers as being good partners and potential to work on, I guess, kind of collaborative approaches to water stewardship. Do you have any specific thoughts on how that might work out?
Sure. I'll jump in. This is Kevin. We just started a program in this year's budget called the Working Soils Program, and you know, I started in this job in 2002, and for that first 5 to 8 years, you know, going and talking to the agricultural community meant that you were going to go and just it was going to be a screaming match on both sides. That was not productive for anyone, and so I started working with individual farmers, individual groups on these issues, and we've progressed it to a point where we have something like 40 different partners from agriculture and upstream communities working on this Working Soils program, where we're partnered with the USDA. We just received a Regional Conservation Partnership Program grant to help facilitate this discussion, to provide funding to farmers so that they do best management practices on their land to reduce pollutant and stormwater runoff. So I think a lot of working with farmers starts by building the trust. You can't just walk in and say, hi, I'm MMSD and we know all the answers. We've learned a lot in our discussions with them about how we can improve as well. And you just need to listen, but you need to build that level of trust. And it goes for that on the municipality level as well. You just need to have a level of trust when you're discussing these things.
Mayor Rothschild, I know you mentioned water wheeling, which is a great term of art in the West, water sharing between municipalities, between Tucson and local farmers. How has that relationship worked for you, and how would you characterize those programs?
Well, what we do is we do put water into a groundwater savings account, which we designate for our agricultural users. And in that way, we do two things. One, we can support our local agricultural community, but the water remains ours, so we can work with them to control the water, work with them on their conservation and irrigation practices. And so far to date, that has kept our agricultural community from going into that groundwater. And so part of that is establishing those long-term relationships as we move forward, so that the agricultural community will understand the municipal needs and also understand that they can work with the municipality. You know, there are different priorities here in the state of Arizona: mining, agriculture, Native American lands, and municipalities. And so establishing those relationships, those working relationships with the agricultural community is important to us now in terms of conservation, but will also be important to us going forward as we work through the challenges ahead.
Terrific answers. Thanks very much, both of you. This is one of those conversations where I'd love to keep going for hours and hours. I see we're coming to the close of our time, so I'm going to put you both on the spot. And in the interest of collaboration and mutual inspiration, ask each of you, what have you learned or been surprised by or taken away from each other's presentations? So, Kevin, what have you learned about Tucson?
You know, I'm just amazed at what Tucson's doing with actually reducing their reliance on groundwater and actually building that bank, as the mayor talked about, the savings account. You always think of Tucson and Phoenix as this arid climate where it's a declining water situation. But just to see what they're doing to bank that 30 to 40 years worth of supply, it's truly innovative, and I applaud them for that. And that's the type of approach we need to see around the country.
Mayor Rothschild?
Sure. I mean, of course, sort of just the converse. I always think of why would you ever have to plan for water supplies in a place like Wisconsin, where there are so many rivers and so much rainfall. But the fact of the matter is the challenges there are just as great as they are in the desert, and the kind of sophisticated planning that has to go on to face those problems. And you can see from the presentation, we do much in the same way, but I was particularly impressed, and I'm going to take back to my water folks this idea of how we deal with the rooftop gardens and the rooftop conservation, because I think that's something that we have here not begun to address. You hear people talk about it from time to time, but if there's a systematic way to do that, you know, it greens the city, it beautifies it, and if at the same time it helps us with our water programs, and then that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I am continually struck by the value of urban forests and greening as water management strategies, but also multi-benefit community enhancements, and they certainly play a role in both locations. I unfortunately have to turn the mic back to the organizers. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and participating in this conversation. Thank you for your questions and letting me relay them. I want to thank both of our presenters, Mayor Rothschild and Kevin Schaefer. Thank you so much for being with us today. Mel, I guess I'd send it back to you.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and thank you again to the presenters and to all of you for joining us. If you missed either of the previous recordings, or if you want to access today's again or share it, you can find a link on the Mayor's Innovation Project webpage about integrated water management. Also, if you're interested in the Efficiency Cities Network calls, as I mentioned before, you can join the mailing list to receive notice about future calls at www.efficiencycities.org. Thank you all, and have a great day.